When you're young, architecture gives form to architecture, basically. It's autonomous and it's basically self-fulfilling. It's without context, no heredity, so to speak. The second phase is architecture gives form to life, and it basically has an impact on the world based on its own terms. And the practice has evolved like that.
Very, very early on, there has always been this hands-on attitude, like a laboratory.
We've always been the leaders in technology in architecture, whether it's digital imagery or digital fabrication.
So this idea of having a workshop, a digital lab, a robot house, was, I think, very much ingrained in the way SCI-Arc has always think about how do we test out our ideas with technology.
There's actually a big reason why I went to SCI-Arc was because of this strong focus on the digital aspects of building and how components can be broken down or forms can be explored through the methods of digital fabrication.
Trying to figure out how to put things together.
How new technologies can make the world a better place, because that's what we all want.
There are a couple of different ways in which students participate in staging an exhibition.
There was a partnership between SCI-Arc and Habitat for Humanity.
On the one hand, there's that moment of development, moment of research, a kind of idea that needs to be thought through, and quite often it actually gets started within the space of a seminar, within the space of a studio.
I ran 3 SCI-Arc studios and 1 SCI-Arc seminar. And the way that it worked is that I think there were like 10 teams who designed different iterations of potential homes for this particular site that we were given. And then there was a project that was selected through a kind of juried process.
In many ways, it becomes a kind of collaboration between faculty member and the students to understand what it means to work on a kind of either it's technique or a historical moment in time or a kind of formal practice.
Students are learning new ways of thinking about architecture and developing their own sensibilities and approaches to how to make form, their approaches to material, their approaches to sort of a kind of conceptual ways of thinking about architecture.
And then the project that was selected, I then ran a design development and a documentation studio, and then on to a construction studio, and then a construction seminar. And so the house was completed in the spring of 2016.
Then there's also a kind of performance of construction or of fabrication. And in some ways, these are moments where students can really experience what it means to put in a sill plate, to drill like screws that are 10 inches deep into a SIP plate, something like a structural insulated panel, and how to actually kind of communicate with a builder or with an engineer on a project.
It was an amazing experience, and I feel like we accomplished something in terms of what we were able to produce, what we were able to build. I did see students take on very particular roles, like students who had strengths in design, others strengths in documentation or organization, because there's a moment where the project becomes a practice endeavor. It was a very powerful and meaningful experience.
SCI-Arc allowed me to imagine a career in architecture that was broader, maybe more multivalent than simply getting through school, chasing a job, figuring out the profession, and proceeding thus.
The SCI-Arc education changed my perspective on how I practice architecture.
SCI-Arc made me, so I owe everything to the school.
The way your life kind of diversifies out of SCI-Arc, I think, is an interesting and singular element of the school. I think there are very, very few schools with graduates that end up heading in as many directions as those do at SCI-Arc. Sometimes many directions within a single graduate, as I think was the case for me, but even more just the radical variety of the ways people take an architectural point of view on the world and capitalize on it in new ways. And I think that's maybe one of SCI-Arc's central defining characteristics.
Although I perhaps as a student took a little bit of an oppositional stance, so sort of went against the grain, the environment of SCI-Arc and the multiplicity of voices that were around as my instructors and others, that made me who I am as a designer. And 25 years since I graduated from SCI-Arc, roots of how I think about architecture were established then, and I've grown with them.
The speculative nature of the education was useful for me to kind of keep finding things in the world that I was interested in pursuing and transforming.
The Root Forms Among Us exhibition really helps me to understand what I could contribute to architecture and urbanism outside of the school.
A recent couple of projects I did are really related to my thesis project at SCI-Arc.
Thesis was such a huge part. It kind of developed a launching pad in which even the practice that now myself and alumni Corey Saxman have started, directly resulting in a commission immediately after graduating, which was a result of a thesis image I posted on Instagram.
The mock-up that we built was for an accessory dwelling unit, an ADU here in LA.
They were truly looking for something experimental and something that would stand out as almost a sculpture in the backyard. So this small ADU became this kind of focal point of a landscape.
I had done a thesis project in this neighborhood called Frogtown and had speculated on building extra buildings in between other buildings and sharing driveways and kind of densifying basically that area.
We were able to transform those singular plans into more generic ones that were then pre-approved by the city of LA to become part of the kind of urban landscape.
What that idea had in common with what my thesis had been was trying to keep the neighborhood itself, like the texture and character of the neighborhood and the streets intact, so not demolishing the existing house.
And also just getting to build, your thesis in reality to some degree was quite exciting and kind of just lit the flame, and we've been kind of rolling ever since.
So in many ways, this was an exhibition, a kind of like thought experiment that became a little bit of an obsession and then culminated in this kind of more professional output, one that, hopefully will service multiple families across the city.
Our office, we do a wide variety of things. We do residential work, commercial work, arts-related institutional work, exhibition design, interiors, sort of a little bit of everything.
I think the thing that's carried through in my work is that we try to interrogate the issue as directly and honestly as possible.
The practice is there in many ways to kind of influence the work that I do with my students when I teach, and vice versa. I think some of the teaching also makes its way often into the practice. And so sometimes it's, for things that kind of go out into the world, and sometimes it's for things that actually come into teaching.
What sort of ended up happening is my own firm, we do more than just conventional spaces design. So I end up doing everything from graphic designs to websites to tech experiences to products and of course spaces.
My advice to the future generation, I guess, is don't work alone and work collaboratively. I think most of the work that we feel so proud about has come out of conversations, dialogues, collaborations.
A lot of people that have come before, they've done really impressive work and really important work. No matter what people are doing, it's always something that our ambitions are to kind of really change the discourse kind of more broadly than just at SCI-Arc.